And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm done having my fun with Dallas. That was a great segment. I loved every second of it. So we're going to move on to NBA basketball, and we are going to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks game yesterday because Giannis was absolutely phenomenal. And we're going to talk about whether or not is the Bucks season, have they revived their season hopes? Have they revived it? Let's find out. So, if you guys did not pay attention to the NBA games, I wouldn't be surprised if you guys did. It's still pretty early in the season to be paying attention to basketball. But Giannis Antetokounmpo, he ended the game with 59 points and 14 rebounds and 7 assists, along with 3 blocks. And in the first quarter alone, the Bucks, they scored 24 points. Giannis had 22 of those 24 points. He was doing absolutely everything, anything that you could really ask for in a basketball player. He was doing. He was also doing this without Damian Lillard, who I have no idea exactly what's wrong with Damian Lillard. I don't know if he's on an injury or I don't know if he's taking a break, but regardless, he was able to do this without Dame, but fret not because Brook Lopez had a great game, 29 points, and along with 8 rebounds to go along with that. Dylan Wright, for some reason, was playing 27 minutes, and he made 0 points, 0 for 4. Fantastic. Then there was AJ Green, 1 for 5 from the field, and 1 for 4 from 3. So, just typical performance coming in from AJ Green, I guess. And then Gary Trent Jr., he finally had a great game. Not a really great game, a good game, I should say. 4 for 8, 3 for 5 from the 3 with 11 points. And on the Pistons side, Cade Cunningham, 35 points, 11 assists, 7 rebounds. Still lost, of course. And Malik Beasley, 26 points and 10 rebounds. It was a very, very high-scoring night for a lot of these NBA teams, and well, at least from an individual standpoint, I should say. So, is the Bucks' season revived? Because now they have recently won 2 games in a row. That is a season record for the Bucks right now, and they're 4-8. They're 12th in the Eastern Conference. Is their season revived? No, it's not. These last few wins for the Bucks, I'm sorry to say this, you Bucks fans, but they were incredibly fluky. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. Let's deep dive in the teams that they ended up beating this season. So, as I mentioned before, they ended up beating the Pistons. Now, the Pistons, they're bad. So, that win should be taken with a huge grain of salt. They are not a good team. They're not a winning team. This team should easily beat the Pistons. There shouldn't even be a debate about it, and the game was close. I understand. I go by the philosophy, you win by a mile, you win by an inch. It doesn't matter. A win is a win, and I completely understand that. However, in this instance, when we're talking about the Bucks, this should not happen. This is just a generational run coming in from Doc Rivers and Darvin Ham. Just 2 of the worst NBA coaches in the history of NBA coaches. But aside from that, this win should be taken with a huge grain of salt. The last win that they had was against the Toronto Raptors. Another win that should be taken with a huge grain of salt because the Raptors aren't even 100% healthy. They don't have Scotty Barnes, who is, in my opinion, their best player on the entire team. And he was leading the Raptors in every single statistical category last season before he got hurt as well. So they did not have Scotty Barnes in this matchup. I understand that the Bucks didn't have Damian Lillard in this matchup either, but still, this win should also be taken with a grain of salt, because if they had Scotty Barnes, I believe they would have won this matchup. Grady Dick had 32 points on the Bucks in this game, and if Scotty Barnes was in it, then most likely this game would have been way more competitive than what it was. The final score was 85-99. So that win should also be taken with a huge grain of salt. And then they lost to the Celtics, of course. Before that, they lost to the Knicks, of course. And then before that, they were able to beat the Jazz. The Jazz, going into that game, had the worst record in the entirety of the NBA, going 1-7. So they effectively beated the worst team in the entire NBA, which, again, that should also be taken with another huge grain of salt for the Bucks. Again, huge grain of salt in these wins so far, right? I mean, the last, let's see, how many wins did they even? The last 3 wins that I've talked about should be taken. All of them should be taken with huge grains of salt, because again, it's like, no, the Jazz are the worst team. We're not gonna give the Bucks any credit for beating the worst team in the entire NBA. And we're also not going to give them credit for beating 2 teams that were injured and not 100% healthy. No, I'm not doing it. And then, let's see, they lost to the Cavs. Of course they did. And they lost to the Cavs again. Of course they did. And before that, let's see. They lost to the Grizzlies. They lost to the Celtics again. And they lost to the Nets. Of course they did. And in the beginning of the season, another injured team. They beat the 76ers without Paul George and without Joel Embiid. So, all of these wins for the Bucks have been against bad teams or injury-riddled teams. This Bucks team is not good. This Bucks team is awful. This Bucks team is disappointing. This Bucks team should not get any credit for any of the wins that they have this season. This is absolutely horrible. It sounds like I'm really like, laying it down on the Bucks, and I am a little bit harsh. I do understand that, but I cannot stand Doc Rivers. I cannot stand Darvin Ham. These two are just incredibly bad. I have a feeling that I could be a better coach than both of these guys, and that's saying something, because I usually never, ever, ever say that about any of these coaches, because I think they have some great basketball minds, and there's a lot of talent and a lot of smart people in the NBA. I think they're like every other team has fantastic coaches. I'd never challenge any of them to coach. But Doc Rivers and Darvin Ham, that would be one of those coaches that I think I could be better than. I mean, this is just, it's appalling to me, right? The only teams that have a worse record than the Bucks are the Wizards, the 76ers, and the Raptors. The Raptors and the 76ers, they get a little bit of a pass, mainly because they're injured, right? But aside from that, the Bucks are the worst team. They are by far worse than the 76ers. They are by far worse than the Raptors. They are worse than every single one of those teams, because there is absolutely zero excuse for the Bucks to be playing this bad. Like, you can make an excuse for the 76ers not being able to stay healthy. You can make an excuse for the Raptors not being able to stay healthy. Can't really make an excuse for Washington. They're just stinky like that. But every other team has an excuse for being bad. There is none for the Milwaukee Bucks. Absolutely none. You cannot name one excuse for the Bucks being bad, aside from their coaches being absolutely abysmal, and Darvin Ham being bad, and Doc Rivers being bad. This is just an example of a very, very, very bad team. These guys are good. This team has a good enough roster to win these games. But the coaching is not there. It's just not. And it really, really upsets me, because this is just wasting prime-time performances like this from Giannis Antetokounmpo. Thankfully, it wasn't a complete and total waste, but it's like, seriously? They cannot win a game most of the time when Giannis or Dame drop 30? That doesn't make any sense. It really, really gets me upset. It really does get me upset, because this is just wasting Giannis's talents. This is wasting Damian Lillard's talents. This season has not been revived for the Bucks at all. Until they beat a legitimate team, and until they beat a team that's actually good, and a team that's not injured, then maybe I'll look into this a little bit more. But as of right now, the only wins that they've had are against injured teams and the Detroit Pistons. If you beat the Pistons, it should not be it's not an achievement if you beat the Pistons. I'm sorry, this team is beatable. The Pistons are beatable. It's not a highlight. No. But yeah, every single one of these wins that the Bucks have been against injury-riddled teams, and they've been against teams that are less than mediocre. So, no, the season is not back. Their season is over at this rate. But that's all that I got to really say on this third segment. I know it was very upsetting. I was very, very mad in this segment. I don't know why. But regardless, that's all that I have to say. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the fourth segment, where we recap all of the games that took place yesterday. And there was a lot of scoring. Like, a lot of individual scoring in this game. In all of these games, actually. So we're going to talk about all of that in this next segment, right after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned, and I'll be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.